Space Nerds, I have brought you here today to talk about the crazy situation Star Citizen is in. We're going to talk about from the letter from the chairman back in 2023, all the way up through the one in 25, the one that came out just at the end of this last year, the fact that we did not get one just now when there was passing of the $1 billion with Squadron 42 coming up, all this stuff, and of course the funding numbers. That kind of weighs in. We've got some information from the financial report here and what they've been saying over the years regarding all of this that I think leads back to why this year in particular is their boiling point. And boy, are we feeling it. Back in this letter from the chairman, this is 2023. Granted, it was the end of 2023, but this was the end of a pretty rough year where they went through some fairly significant changes. One of those changes, as many of you might remember, is Todd Pappy left as the director of the PU, the person who was running Star Citizen. He was replaced by Richard Tyrer, who said, "Firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you, or to say how great it is." I'm putting words in his mouth. Say how great it is to be back working on Star Citizen. Some of you may already know me, but I was a core gameplay pillar director before I moved over to become the game director on Squadron 42. So he went and did a whole bunch of Squadron stuff, which supposedly got Squadron into a state of actually being on the path to release, as yet foreseen. And he came over to do it to Star Citizen as well. And there was a pretty significant change when this happened, I think, or maybe within like a year of this happening. You noticed it a lot last year with more things getting delivered in content drops. There's some interesting bits that he says here about what he learned when he was running Squadron 42, but down here is best. This is like the most important stuff. He says, with every release going forward, right after talking about base building and crafting kind of being a thing he wants to work on, the intention is to move ourselves closer to that end goal of 1.0. So you should expect to see large updates each quarter with many changes to systems that have not been touched in a long time, like economy, insurance, etc. Now, yes, we actually are. The item recovery stuff, we won't get into that. Alongside a whole suite of quality of life improvements to things like inventory, missions, mobiGlas, etc., coupled with totally brand new features and content. They keep using things like quality of life, playability, polish. These types of things keep getting said, dating all the way back to 23, looking at the different trailers that were coming out. That, I think, is a big part of why they're building so much tension. But we'll get back to that. That'll just keep coming up. So that was a big part of 2023 and what changed. You also remember that they finally got persistent entity streaming into the game. Now, they still were working on server meshing, but at this point we were between PES and server meshing in this kind of limbo, where I think they really suffered financially in not being able to push forward on really anything from the PU to Squadron 42 to anything else really. Soul Seeker, whatever it was called, Soul Singer. The other thing that happened was that Benoit came on as CTO after Turbulent was fully acquired by CIG. This completed the meshing of two studios that worked in quite different ways from what I've heard. Turbulent was a very, I don't want to say well-oiled machine because I don't know how well it ran, but it ran as a company that has been running for a while. They were founded back in like 2001, I think, 1999, around that time, by Benoit, Marc Boudet, and I think one other person. And their whole goal was just doing tech stuff in various industries. They were not just a gaming company. They would take on problems that required digital tech prowess, and they would handle that, whether for movie studios, game studios, or other internet-based things. They did a good job at that, and they got picked up by CIG to do some contracting work around 2013 and have worked with CIG on that since then. Over that time, they got more and more financial funding from CIG, more of their workflow was intertwined, and eventually the company was acquired and Benoit was made the CTO. Now, he's very much recognized as a regular face of Star Citizen, but he wasn't before. And I don't know how that's affected his position within the company, but he certainly appears to have more influence over the direction things are going in, obviously being CTO. When he did come on, he said, "One of my first initiatives as CTO was establishing the technology preview channel." Y'all know I got things to say about that. It's a space where developers can fearlessly test large technology changes with players way before they go live, fostering the spirit of open development with our community. In 2024, our server meshing journey is hitting its stride after years of dedication. We're closing in on the original vision we set out to achieve. Kept on going on to talk more about this stuff, acknowledging things like 30K is a humongous achievement for the game and for Star Engine, separating the simulation and replication. But again, this was 2 years ago. And, well, we're going to see how much has changed since then. We can jump forward from there to 2025. This is about a year later, 13 months-ish later, I think. I don't know if there's a date on here. This letter is now releasing with the hindsight of what we just read, but also the full year of development that was 2024, which was rough. So they opened up by basically saying, as we jump into the new year, this is Chris Roberts' words, our primary focus across Star Citizen is clear: improving playability. Our goal, our drive for playability surrounds three critical areas: performance, stability, and content. This is where a lot of people get mixed up. They were not solely focused on stability. We understand that the live environment must be far more reliable and consistent, and we are determined to deliver on this. They stopped. That's the problem. And we kind of called this out when they made this letter. They're going to do this. They're going to fix stuff. They're going to get things, repaired. And then they got to go back to development. That's not going to work. If anybody who's been watching the development of this, they have not been putting in the most serious features, and still it destabilizes everything. What's going to happen when they're putting in a damage model and engineering, crafting, refining, AI features that do certain things? These are all going to have an effect. So it was weird to hear the idea that they wanted to both focus on playability, but also continue to move forward. Until you get down here, where they explain why that might be possible. He said, to achieve our goals, we are making a fundamental change, decoupling feature development from content creation and general fixes. This means new features will no longer hold up content delivery or risk destabilizing the live environment. This approach will leverage the tech preview channel, which was reserved for major new pieces of technology. You guys will remember, we go back to where Benoit joined in and became the CTO and made his big things, and he said his first initiative was establishing the tech preview channel. So they are now changing the need for it 1 year later. It will now extend to gameplay feature testing too. So that would include things like engineering, instancing, refueling, features. When a new feature is deemed complex or risky enough to require focused testing, we'll introduce a separate experimental PTU channel dedicated to only that feature. Testing in this isolated channel will allow us to refine and stabilize the feature without impacting content and broader development work. Only once the feature is fully greenlit will it integrate into our standard Evo PTU live pipeline. We went over this in depth, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, but they say that this means that the stability and predictability are going to be getting better. The team can focus on improving stability, performance, and quality of life. And then the playability initiative. They're going to be tying together content releases that feel more connected to the world. Now, we've seen that for sure. We've seen that not from Xenothreat. That's not a great attempt at that. But we've seen it from a lot of other stuff, from tactical strike groups to Rockcracker, all that stuff. And it's not stuck around. That's the biggest thing. Now, you can be like, hey, Tomato, they said that was the 2025 focus, the year of playability. But you might notice in 2025, we didn't get any EPTUs. Well, we got some. I think we got maybe 2, possibly 3, but that plan didn't work. The question then is, when does this strategy actually kick in? Because they actually do need to do this, right? Everybody can agree they need to launch 1.0. I know plenty of people will say, I don't want any new features. I want them to fix the features that are in. The fact of the matter is, like, fixing the features that are in, they need new features to fix them. You're not going to get a fix to falling through planets. I'm sorry. That's a problem with Planet Tech working with server meshing likely. And they need to update it. It's just how it has to be. You're also not going to be able to get, batteries charging. We need to be able to charge stuff. Charge and drain doesn't work. Like, there's no fix to that. that's simply something that doesn't function as it's supposed to. Or the fact that you can't buy materials from an NPC in the game. That's feature work. That's not a bug fix. It's not something fixing something that's broken. They have to literally go in and do something new to create that possibility. Player trading, social tools. These are all things that they can't just fix to make work. And if they just fixed the game we had now, it'd be fun, but it would get old really fast. It would be trash. It's just not a full game. Sorry. So when you look at this page of 1.0 features, everything from like hangar upgrades, like being able to move stuff around in your hangar, to a quantum travel system that lets us actually quantum travel where we want instead of having to look at an actual points to move there, to FPS radar and scanning. So you can literally just identify where minerals are on the ground around you. These are not going to say simple to implement, but simple in people's minds kind of features. And they are the kind of thing that people are looking forward to Star Citizen 1.0 for. So when you say, what's the priority here? It's definitely keeping things stable, but also making sure that they can reach 1.0. The idea that we need to reach 1.0 is obvious. But then there's the other side of the equation. They need to make money. And if there's anything that has been more proven true, besides, more ships mean more money, a more stable game generally means more money. Now, let's ignore this May, because it was not a stable game. But I think last year, the goodwill of the game actually having some realistic releases, some playability improvements, and more ship sales, I think led to a lot more money. And the same will happen this year if they don't stop keeping the game playable, which is why I think they're coming out with this big update. The community made its noise, and CIG has to judge how useful certain decisions are going to be. And I think they've made the call that, like, at this point, they're just going to lose way more people if they don't keep the game somewhat playable. So finding a way to keep it playable and finding a way to move towards 1.0 proves to be a struggle, but they laid it out here. So then once we move past this letter into the year of 2025, you start to get all these different kind of things being said. So here is the CTO last year in September, I believe. And this was kind of after a fairly hefty period of anger about freight elevators. Now, they had already answered to the freight elevators earlier in the year. CTO came on camera, talked about what they wanted to do. They did some fixes, fixed some of the stuff, not all of it. That's why we're seeing them talk about it now again. But back then, they were kind of in hot water, not so much, but they were trying to start explaining how the game's patch deliveries were working.
Talk to me about our internal stability scores and how we've determining them and how we're using them.
Yeah, so stability score is, I don't think we've ever discussed this publicly.
No, I don't think so.
So we have this measure, which is an indication that we use, and the team that actually comes up with this would already tell you it's alchemy, right? Like, it's not an exact science, but it does give us a pretty good idea. So we try to establish a stability score for every build, right? We actually auto-calculate it based on the data that we get.
And not patched, every build.
Every build, yeah, every build. So like, we send a build to PTU, or QA or staging environments or whatever, and we always have a stability score that's calculated over time. And so what the stability score is, without going, I don't want to go into the alchemy of it, but we're trying to figure out basically the stability of the environment. And so if you're connected to a game server and you get disconnected, we're going to count that. Right now, the reason for your disconnection will be used as part of that. How long the build has been running is also part of that equation, and the concurrency of it is also part of it. And so with this black magic numbers, right, we basically get a score out of it. And the score is one thing. Now we've put labels on it. So we used to use the score internally as just a number, like, oh, it's a 0.0 and it's a 0.08 build, and then at some point I got a bit fed up with that, because I'm like, what does that mean? And so the values for this are optimal, excellent, stable, unstable, volatile, crippled, or critically unstable. So that's the range.
I wonder what we reached on in May, which of those levels we got to. I don't think they tell us with each patch. I'd love that, though.
Right. So we go from optimal, which is great, stability score to critically unstable, right? And all of the thing in between, right? And this is based on, all the stats that we get, and we kind of auto-calculate it. Now, we still have Jeffrey Pease, our internal alchemist, always, playing around with these numbers or adjusting the score, telling us how bad we're doing it. But it is actually pretty accurate in terms of like what the perceived stability will be from a player's perspective. And so if I compare, what was September 11 last year? Was it like 323 or maybe 4 at that point, right? 323 or 4, I forget which one. I would say like the stability score for 323X was probably in the kind of unstable range, right?
Okay.
That would be a normal range for the 3.2X, this kind of thing, right? So the stability score, server score for 4.30, for example, is between optimal and excellent. And so that means the rate of server crashes and disconnections overall is really good. Now, this score is not just server crashes, right? It's also client crashes or client disconnection, right? So if everybody gets disconnected because one of our cloud routers dies, then the stability score of the build will be terrible, even though the servers are up and they're running real fine, right? So it kind of encompasses everything. We're trying to get one number for all of it.
What was the stability score for a 318?
Jared.
That was critically unstable.
Yeah, of course that's going to be bad.
I mean, it's funny because...
Yeah, so I'm betting... Wait,
because actually the server, if you just took the server score for 318, it wasn't that bad, but it's everything before it. That's why it was so critical in the 318 areas. It's because it was really a massive backend, problem at the time. So yeah, let's not talk about that. We're past that now. But
the two things we don't talk about: that damn holiday live stream and Alpha 318.
That's right.
At least Alpha 318 had to happen. At least that.
I don't know if I can't say 4.8 goes on that list, but dang, I think 4.8 is the 4.8 will always be the egg on face. I think after all this, like they can't have another patch like 4.8.
Had to happen in order to get everything that came after it. There was nothing about the holiday live stream that needed to happen. So
at the very least, if they have another patch like 4.8, it's got to be like in October, right before IAE, right before the biggest hype time, so that because at this point you're just riding that downward slope off of Invictus Week.
You don't want the makeup? Let's go back with the makeup.
All right, so this was the talk that happened in September of last year with the CTO. Now, here is the statement that came from the senior game director of the game just 2 months later.
Everybody knows, and you mentioned just now, that this year we changed a whole lot about how we operate and how we release things. How do you think that's gone?
I think it's gone very well. I think if the mantra that I've always been pushing this year at the beginning of January was patch always goes. And I think this year has seen a different development strategy for how we've been moving the game forward. That's where this different strategy has allowed us to really take a wider approach. And we also have to remember that Star Citizen is played by tens of thousands of players every day. And while we have lofty future goals, we still have to make decisions right now that make the game fun for the people that are playing it all the time.
They can't just say this kind of stuff on camera, man, and then not. Like, this is why it doesn't matter if we're in alpha, because what's coming out of their mouths is that, like, they understand that it's not being taken as an alpha by people. And so this kind of stuff, I think, is really starting to hurt them with, like, more of the players who are joining in, not as people who want to back a game and watch something be created and enjoy the development, but of people who have seen this idea that there's like a game to play. And it's just kind of it's a bummer, because it really goes to show how the trajectory of the marketing and the trajectory of the development have, like, I don't want to say started to diverge, but started to clash as it just takes longer and longer to make the game. The people who are making it, like, are very, very on top of what they need to do to make it, I think, but they're working in an environment where you're not, it's not exactly supposed to be for being made. I don't know, man.
The game. If you
Crazy.
look at previous years, we've had to hold a patch back, we've had to make concessions, mainly due to around a feature may not have been ready or right to go into there.
There were 3 months, 4 months, sometimes 5 months between
Exactly,
patches.
and I don't think that's good for anybody. I don't think it's good for the players. I don't think it's good for the development team. I think it's better to have regular cadence of drops. One good example is this year for A Line in Mine.
And it is better to have regular cadence of drops. But like what you don't have to drop the new features right into the patch. That's what we're missing.
People probably don't know, but A Line in Mine, when you turned on the laser, it was actually supposed to reveal the sandworm Valakar. And I played it, and it didn't hit the quality that I wanted to go into the game. So we changed, and I took it out, and I made that decision alongside Chris and Erin, and we've held that back, and we're going to work on that towards a future patch. But I think definitely the more regular cadences has had the multiple benefits, and like I said, I want to dispel a myth right here, right now. Like, features are still being worked on quite heavily in the background, from radar and scanning, in FPS, the new quantum, to inventory, engineering, and crafting, and all of those features are going to be coming very, very soon for players to get their hands on.
I gotta hear that list again, wait.
In the background, from radar and scanning, in FPS, the new quantum, to
Radar and scanning, FPS, and the new... Oh, dude, those are such carrots now. There's a... Hold on, I bet I could find this pretty quickly. There's a video from like 2 years prior. I know I'm gonna get this. I think it's this one.
The visor and lens system, loot screens, default item interactions in the personal interaction system, and there's even new shopping and mission apps in development now. And while we're talking about apps, the first half of 2024 is also currently scheduled to see the arrival of our new character customizer with things like tattoos.
That was pretty sick.
Piercings, scars.
We got
and
that.
yes, Virginia, it's true, beards. And as for how many and of what kind,
People were hyped for beards.
only Andre knows for sure, but you can bet we're gonna ask him sometime around March. And then, of course, if you're in-game, there's also a little thing called Mobiglass and an awfully big thing called Star Map. They're both getting their big updates in the first half of next year. And have I mentioned those enormous features, new and updated vehicles that are making their way to the persistent universe in just the... Check those off. Top. CIG hat back on.
It wasn't, it was the quantum travel.
Pilot and operate ships we've been discussing since CitizenCon 2952. Now, whether that's every ship or a staggered rollout of groups of vehicles,
this is
depends
master
on.
modes.
And you can be in flight. They can be stored in the cargo transaction system. They form the net for the entire variety of FPS combat improvements coming to the first half of 2024, with improvements to reloading, the weapon wear and misfire system, scopes and dynamic crosshairs, and charge and drain, and even more. We'll be able to show you once we return in the new
We
year.
actually got most of this.
And then.
You know, I thought the quantum boost. I thought quantum travel stuff was in here. So never mind. We're okay. It was just this video that it was just this one that's baiting me with the features that we still can't seem to get.
background, from radar and scanning, in FPS, the new quantum, to inventory, engineering, and crafting.
But
and
the
all
point
of
of this
those
clip,
features are going to be...
sorry, the point of this clip, not to get so distracted, is the interesting way that they highlight the need for stability here with this stability scan or stability score, but then also having the person who is in charge of the game coming out and saying, we need to push stuff regularly. If something doesn't work, we'll pull it out and make sure it works. And then and not only are we not seeing the stability score seemingly taken into account when it comes to a big patch like 4.8 because of a sale coming up, but we're also seeing a patch not getting the stuff stripped out of it that doesn't work. Like, the Ironclad shouldn't have come out in 4.8 if it was meant to keep the patch more stable. So I think CIG needs to consider how much they've talked about this publicly and stick to that, which, you know, with this update it seems like they are. But is this going to stick? Is this going to be a constant ongoing philosophy, or are they just going to leave us with another explanation for how things are going to work and then forget about it a year and a half later? That being said, we can keep going. 2025, as they say, was truly the year of playability for Star Citizen. They did a lot of talking about statistics. We had a record-setting engagement this year, 64 million hours played in Star Citizen, up from 48 million in 2024, which we looked into the numbers and they were a little bit weird. A 40 to 60% increase in daily average users and average peak concurrency, and also huge improvements in server stability with 57% fewer player disconnections per 1 million player hours compared to 24. They feel like it was a very good year, and I think it was, in terms of, like, I mean, again, funding was very good, and even new players. Not bad on the new players front. Second best year ever. Well, new accounts, we'll say. But that's because there was good content and there was stuff to do and the game was stable, so people felt comfortable joining in, even if it meant you were still dealing with not complete features. So, eye on the horizon. They say, looking ahead to 2026, our focus remains clear. We continue improving stability and depth in Star Citizen while expanding and connecting core systems that shape how you play. Engineering to inventory, crafting, social tools, and other foundational features. This is the same strategy, right? They want to continue to improve stability, but also they want to include the features that people are actually excited for. So they say it. Don't bait us with the words if you're not going to do it, in my opinion. And while we've seen some ePTU use so far, I think improving stability and Star Citizen expanding has not really been the reality of 26 so far. As we expand outward, we'll also build deeper. Genesis planets represent our next step in planetary tech, offering breathtaking worlds with significantly improved graphical fidelity and denser, more dynamically assembled biomes. We covered that pretty recently. Check out that deep dive. That's a fun one. These planets are driven by the rules of nature and our designers creating ecosystems that feel alive and authentic. Combined with Starkitect locations throughout, Genesis planets deliver both the environmental depth and the gameplay density we need. Okay, supporting that will be a new AI population management system that creates inhabitants appropriate to their local environment and enables more complex interactions between agents. All of this has actually been grouped up together into one deliverable, and I'm realizing just now, Chris was telegraphing that in this letter before Benoit got on camera in March and actually said it. They said they're also upgrading core systems that have been with us for years. Item recovery, inventory, insurance, and cross-patch persistence. These have been focuses. They've actually been working on these things. We've seen inventory improvements. You actually just saw something about that in the last monthly report. Item recovery work's been going on slower than I think it should be, but it's going on. Insurance work is, along with that, also causing chaos for a lot of people. And cross-patch persistence. Negative movement is still movement. No, I think actually persistence between patches, while painful, is getting better. It's still not bulletproof, which it needs to be for a game like this, but it's you know, it's jumping around. And then obviously for Squadron 42, that's their priority. So they don't really talk about too many other features here, which is kind of funny. But the fact that still at the beginning of 26, they're talking about trying to improve stability while also delivering on these features means that we should be seeing some kind of a strategy that encourages that. And this year we have not. So I think that's where a lot of the discomfort comes from. And then 4.8 came out.
He's having the same reaction to it you are, Jasper. These guys work hard. These guys work hard to make these ships as good as they can be. And unfortunately, as the nature of running a live environment in the middle of your development, sometimes things don't work. I mean, folks are asking, obviously. Let's use this opportunity to talk about the mission system. Why not? We were going to do it at some point. The mission system is having some trouble. You obviously don't need me to tell you that if you've tried to jump in. They are working on a hotfix to fix that right now. The patch that we mentioned that's supposed to be going out next Tuesday is not for hotfixes. That's an actual legitimate build and a patch. The hotfix for the mission system that will hopefully restore what's happening there, I don't have any more details about specifics, will go out as soon as somebody decides that it's ready to go out. But hotfixes, patches, different. There's also another question in there about why we release things in such states. And every time that question comes up quite often, I go back to 2017 and the wait for 3.0. when we didn't have any new content for like 9 months because we waited and waited and waited and tried to get everything done, tried to get everything perfect, tried to get everything dialed in, and there was no new content for 9 months. I had that stupid beard because I said I wasn't going to shave.
It sucked. You guys remember the burn down? Oh boy.
Until the patch came out.
I feel it.
That's not a. It was stupid for me, Mark. It's lovely on you.
But honestly, the game worked. That's like people look back at 3.17 kind of fondly because it was a stable time before 3.18, and I think most people would have preferred if 4.8 had just not come out. And instead there was, like, I think a lot of people like the idea that 4.9 is just going to be mainly a smoothing over of what's going on. Because at the end of 3 months of not getting new content, as much as that 3 months sucked, at the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, here we are. Now we're getting the content again. And hopefully they deliver it in a more stable way and environment. But just like, I don't know, a drought, I don't think to a lot of people sounds too bad right now compared to the alternative. I think there's going to be a lot of different opinions on that, though, so I won't claim that that's speaking for everyone.
Lovely on you. Mine was all great. I look like a homeless person, but it's and even with all that work and even with all that waiting, it still had its issues. And when the answer is there's no such thing as waiting until something's perfect. There's just not. So we put things out in the best condition that we can, and we continue to fix and we continue to push and we continue to develop afterwards, which is what the folks working on the hotfix for the mission system are doing right now, which is what you're doing with fixing the damage pass-through for the Ironclad.
And our friends from CGP4 as well.
Yep.
Shout out to them.
So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the Ironclad Assault, which is...
So things are not being held back then. Essentially what he's saying is we get stuff into the best possible state that they can be, we push it out, and then we will fix it as we go. Which does kind of line up with what Rich is saying. He just wants to like strip things out and then get them into the game to go. But again, I don't think that's reaching a high enough level of quality. Like, you guys might take stuff out, you might make it so the patch can launch, but clearly it's not. And 4.8 wasn't. So a little bit weird. Now, the other side of it is when these patches come out, they're filled with sales. Just constant pushes to upgrade, emails to buy things, advertisements, and like ship purchases everywhere. I'm the kind of person who is gonna say, don't spend your money on ships, don't buy ships if you're not trying to support the game. But if you are trying to support the game, it needs it. They ain't gonna make a game if they're not making any money. So they do need to sell stuff and make money with it. But I think that they should sell stuff through like making the best thing. And if you're having bad patches but also pushing ship sales, it becomes more obvious that the ship sales are really the focus, especially when the patches tend to be something like 4.8.3, which didn't really do much. This brings us to the newest talk that Jared has had with Benoit, the same guy who was talking about the stability score here. This is in response to what is currently happening. So we've got about 8 months now difference from the last time we saw him talk about stability scores and stuff. Here's his commentary on the current situation.
Let's talk a little bit about how 4.8 did. I saw there was a lot of commentary online that 4.8 was as bad as 3.18 and whatnot. We don't need to rehash 3.18 whatnot. Most people watching the show knows 3.18 at this point. Was it really as bad as 3.18? No. Or talk to me about what's your take on how 4.8 went.
Well, for me, if I take from the machine room side of things, we've been firefighting since we launched 4.8. I mean, from a whole slew of different issues. Some of them are to be expected when we launch a patch that has this many amount of core changes. Like 4.8 has, we've touched on systems that are really central to the traversal again. So we're talking about the entitlement system, which has not changed in years at this point, and we've completely overhauled the entitlement system in 4.8 to power in part the item imprint system, but more importantly to pull the entitlements out of the patch cycle and persist them across patches. So what we call the LTP layer is not just what you have in your inventory, it's also what you own. Your ships and all of the items that you purchase in game now have an entitlement record that holds the insurance loadouts for it, all of the customizations that you make out of it, and that's hosted outside the game, not outside the game, but outside the game patch, which means that when we come back from a patch, there's no risk of, oh, I'm not getting my ship back, right? What you see in ASOP in the first patch will be exactly the same data source in the second patch, and so that risk of...
So this is actually pretty important. This is him explaining something that even Chris was saying in his letter at the end of last year, which was that cross-patch persistence was a pretty important, significant improvement they wanted to work on. Now, this also falls in line with what Benoit was saying back here in September. And if you look at Benoit or Star Citizen Live episodes over the last 6 months or so, there was also another patch or another talk here in February, with Benoit, where he went over this same thing. The idea of imprints, persistence, insurance, and ownership is really key because that is ruining a lot of the game for people. Not having your stuff persist between patches, not having the game recognize what you do and don't own. So as they try to get tech figured out to make that better, it is destabilizing the game. And this is something that we've seen happen with previous patches going all the way back to 3.0. 3.3 with object container streaming. I believe it was 3.5 with, is it 3.7? Server-side object container streaming somewhere here. Yeah, that was one. 3.18, obviously, with the persistent entity streaming. 4.0 with server meshing. These are all patches that caused big upswells and instability because they were doing stuff in the back end. Interestingly, it's not listed in the core tech here, but it is kind of listed in, I think, like the gameplay section. Oh, that's 4.9, sorry. Item recovery. So it's kind of listed as core tech, but it doesn't come off as serious with that name. This seems to have been a pretty destabilizing thing in the game at the time. But again, it's kind of like, why, for these big pieces of tech that we talk about going into the game that can destabilize stuff, what happens to this model when considering that? And why can't we get enough people into the EPTU to test it?
Of like losing ships across is completely gone. So we're very happy. In fact, that bit actually went very well in 4.8, even though up to the launch, it was, there's always last minute things to look at. But we have been firefighting across a multitude of different issues that were tangential to that. Some of them we can touch on a little bit because I've made some notes to talk about gameplay systems here and why they were affected by some minor infrastructure issues that turned out to be massively contributing to the perception of the patch. So I'll talk a bit about that in a bit, but basically we've been firefighting since 4.8.0.
So clearly it was rough. I really think that they should start putting out that stability score that he was talking about before. There's a lot of contradiction here that I think all comes back to a lack of parallel testing, which, to be quite honest, I think all comes back to funding at the end of the day. I think the number one thing that's causing Star Citizen's problems are, drum roll please, Squadron 42! Yes! Yes, that's right, everybody! God, we love it. We love it. I feel bad, honestly, because I'm excited for Squadron. But it has created, it's like a weight hanging on Star Citizen's neck that has created so much animosity towards it because it just takes a lot of resources. We know that developers are still moving over to Squadron 42 to work on it. Clearly, it's still being worked on. They have not been able to confirm for us when the release date is this year. But they also haven't been able to delay it. And that is the absolute most painful situation they are in. Of all of this stuff that's happening, the pinnacle of the tension comes from the fact that Squadron 42 cannot be delayed. If it's delayed, this year, this record-breaking year that clearly needs a lot of money for whatever reason we'll get to in a little bit, it starts to fall flat. And I do think that they're in a position where it can't fall flat. We know that they were down money from 2023. Their cash reserves went down. We know that there is a put option from the investors that is exercisable right now. Like, if I was in charge of CIG, I would also be trying to make as much money as possible. Hey guys, this is not a risky bet. You are good. We'll be fine until 2029. This is the big one, right? For 277,500 shares, their put rights are exercisable on January 1st, 2028 only. Their earlier put exercise date have now passed. For 1,599,900 shares, their first put rights are exercisable between 1st of January 2026 and the 30th of January 2026. We are in this period right now, right? Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how money works that well, but if you're at this point where they could exercise that many shares of investment into your company, which can total up to 71 million pounds at a time when, oh man, if we could find their numbers again, I think it said they had 13,000 or $13 million. I can't find it again, but you guys, you saw the numbers. There's clearly a lot of liability there. Here we go. 5 million cash equivalent at the end of 24. This is not at the end of 25. So again, they had an amazing year in 25 that could have changed this stuff, but they're clearly in a period of high tension. I don't think they can say anything about Squadron 42 because they can't have Star Citizen players starting to pull back right now, but they also can't focus on Squadron 42 because maybe it's ready, maybe it's not. I don't know. It could be coming this year. It could be coming early next year. I genuinely don't know. And it's going to be cool when people get to finally see it in October. But until then, it's all questions up in the air. And I think that's where really all of this comes from, is like, you've been sending these messages about Star Citizen, and I'm sure those messages were dependent on the idea that Squadron was going to be moving faster and getting out of the way, and it didn't. And now instead of saying that, they're just kind of like chilling. So we'll see where it goes from here. A lot of this rests on 4.9, I think. A lot of this rests on their ability to actually get the game into a functional state across a number of game loops and mission opportunities in 4.9 and 4.10. I would go so far as to say maybe even consider not even doing 4.10 in August and focus on 4.11. That's my summary of how we got to where we are right now, and we'll see what they do next.